So, welcome. Thank you for coming for our talk with Iliana and Scherezade. And we're going to make this also a podcast. And so we're excited about this. We'll make sure it's available later today on iTunes and several other platforms. But I want to first thank them for participating with Early Encounters. And this exhibition is about the people that met at the beginning of Nut Island. That's what Governor's Island was originally called, Nut Island, because it had a lot of trees with nuts on it. And that's where the various Dutch colonists, welcome, came first before they crossed the river to Mannahatta. So thank you all for coming. And so we're going to get started. So I'm going to start off with Iliana to talk about her installation and what it means for her.
The installation that I actually choose to be in this show, actually was actually inspired by the story of migration movements, and it was perfect with the early encounters because I always talk about the power of we and the power of community and the fact that humans have the basic need, all of us, doesn't matter where you're coming from, of wanting, moving, desires. We appreciate a lot of things.
Yes, we do.
And the history of humanity has been always the same. If you actually check the point that people is in one place, move to the others, make another family. So there's always a mobility. And that what makes is that we are all mixed. We have so much of a lot of things in us. Mm-hmm. And I like the idea that the only way to know who you are now, it will be almost to deconstruct your past and try to trace your map. And the only way that you actually do that is actually going back and trying to figure it out. You know, my hands are my mother's, but my head is my father. But that actually is almost deconstructing your body and your memories to kind of see where you are. And in the case of this island, that's actually in the middle, that has so many meetings, so many people coming in and out, it was a meeting of things,
yes.
Meeting of places, a meeting of histories. So it was already rich to begin with. And that's all of us. We are all islands, and we actually come back together. So the piece that I have is actually almost a three-dimensional drawing. And I like the fact that it grew as I was making it, because it didn't start really with a map. It just started by putting pieces together, almost making shapes and making things that you can identify, but also that you have to play with, because you really have to find the shapes there. So it becomes a half game, half maze, that is actually what we are. So that's inspired also with the concept of community. Okay. Of the Indians, the native Indians.
No. I like that part about sometimes in order to know who you all are, you have to deconstruct your past in order so that you can figure it out. Because we are all blended people. If we are telling the truth, we have different percentages of different elements of different people, DNA, but we are all blended people. So now, Scherezade, with your installation and where you mixed indigenous people in 17th century Dutch fashion, tell us, how did that all begin for you?
Well, first, I had to say that I was super busy when you called me for this exhibition. I'm in the middle of a big solo show, but previously, Savona and I, we are working in another exhibition that, in my opinion, was wonderful. It was titled Loosely Coupled, and we really had a great experience. I mean, to the point that we collected new artist friends, and they became friends because of that exhibition. And but then when she said to me, "Oh, you know, the title of the exhibition is going to be Early Encounters," and I'm like, "Cannot say that. My cup of tea. Talking about tea, my cup of tea." Because first of all, everything that I do, it is about this constant conversation that I have with people. We are not that different. And the reason I do all these figures, and some people that know my work have seen it, that all my people have seen them in color. It is not about the history of like this community, that community, that community. It's about us. The moment you mix in a palette, the yellow, the red, the blue, everything, when it comes together, this brown, and by mixing all these colors, I am exercising an action of inclusion. And then by doing this brown, aesthetically is inclusion. And then by being inspired by the history of Las Americas, which is this other wonderful side of the Atlantic, where it's so complex yet so young, I want to talk about all these things that we take for granted. Mm-hmm. Oh, look, the Dutch took over, really? Yeah, they did in a way, but look how that native culture lived with us no matter what. And the more we try to put it down, it comes afloat. And then that's why I wanted to make these enormous and super baroque and mixed costumes. Then if you take a look at the decoration, it's all symbols of the Lenape Indians and Native Americans. They are feathers, yet with the big color of the Dutch. So it's like completely a mix. I take and I live. I take and I, but it's about the merging. Mm-hmm. It's about the merging that is beautiful. And it's the most beautiful outcome of a conquest that became, and it is still very bloody, but definitely they're part of the outcome and it's beautiful. Mm-hmm. So I was definitely very inspired by the fact that this, New York is an archipelago. Mm-hmm. It's an archipelago, so I love the fact that by doing that, like the archipelago, it's all these little islands that somehow, even when they are divided by water, they are dots together. So it's all about that. That's why I decided to capitalize on the walls. Those layers that we cannot see there yet, they are there. Mm-hmm. So basically, that is, and the pieces I made, these pieces is specifically for this show.
Well, I just want to thank you both for participating, and I love the color schemes of your paintings because it does show that blend of both, the old world, or what we call the old world, and the new world, because it ranges in different, interpretations. But the materials, going to Iliana, the materials that you chose specifically for your installation, where did they come from? Where did you source the materials for your installation?
Well, the main piece, I actually used repurposed wood because I wanted to do something that was recycling. Mm-hmm. Also that it was something that had a history already by its own. Mm-hmm. That knowing that we are not new, mm-hmm. because we are actually going with a lot of weight behind, I wanted the material to be something that was already used in something else. I just actually giving a new life and a new chapter in Vietnam. And in the case of the installation of the chairs, those chairs that were made in the Dominican Republic with native wood from the island, from the Spanish island, specifically the southeast, and everything is basically natural. It is what we call the one or the wicker, and I try to kind of more than ever. I want to try to do native stuff in everything I do because we're losing so much of that.
Right.
In the fact that we are fabricating everything, we're doing so much plastic, so much fake stuff. Not fake, but built stuff.
You can use the word fake.
I don't use the word fake. So I actually wanted to go back because number one, I'm using someone's hands that's a craft and a skill that is actually getting lost. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like I'm maybe killing a tree, but I may be saving a tradition. Mm-hmm. And in that case, I will be saving history because that will be something that at least is going to keep going a little bit more. And that is so important, your history and your traditions and the culture. Mm-hmm. So it's a catch-22, but I really embracing that, the fact that I want to use nature to make something new. So it's already extending the book.
Which is another encounter.
Yes. Yeah.
Nature, because oftentimes that gets, pushed to the backdrop as not being important. I'm reading a book right now that I've been hunting down for about a couple of years, and Strand Books helped me to retrieve it just this past week, called Black Rice, because it talks about the rice culture that began in West Africa, that the Portuguese first noted and then learned that they were growing rice and what they call cereal, because the Europeans were still trying to get more food to their people, and then it morphed from West Africa to the Caribbean to the Americas, South Carolina, Brazil, and so therefore this whole culture of even food is important, and we tend to trivialize it, but it's not. It was very important. How did people survive? And that was based on traditions, and then people morphed them and readapted them so that folks could survive in the Americas. So no, what you're saying makes a lot of sense. The loss of traditions, and where did it come from? So do you feel that this also helped you in doing this particular installation, that you are sort of reclaiming a tradition?
Completely, because you do so many things and then you realize what I'm doing for the future or what I'm doing for the next generation, especially because we're actually faced right now with this very young generation with so much, but with so little at the same time. They have so much visual, so much technology, so much gear to do things. But most likely we'll never be able to survive outside if they actually live outside in the woods overnight. Because they wouldn't know how to start a fire, they wouldn't know how to eat from the plants that are next to them, they wouldn't know the sound of an animal howling, because they haven't been exposed to, because they have been most likely looking on the TV, maybe many things. Yeah, and it's not their fault. It's actually how society works and how we actually make it work, how we actually decide not to do this, to do that. Because supposedly it's new, because it's more modern. But what we're losing is more. So it's almost like we need the balance of that. We have the experience and the knowledge. They may have this intelligence or division, because I tell you, these kids are amazing. But we may be able to do it in a more tactile way. We have the touch. We have our senses are more keen than theirs.
Right.
No, and it's not like they want to lose them, but we can actually, I like the idea of me helping them move back, let it back, so they can actually feel it, show them what they may be missing. So with the artwork, it's like that. I like to do my installations myself. I actually drill, cut, because it's part of the fact that I'm actually doing it. Right. Feeling more kind of in touch with whatever idea I have.
Connecting the dots. Right. I know. I get what you're saying. It's important, because you're right. A lot of young people, but also people who are older, they seem to be disconnected with certain histories, and therefore they can't understand. So Scherezade, with yours, tell us your process for developing your paintings.
Well, one of the things that I've been always very, I am inspired and fascinated by the history of Las Americas. So one of the things that always bothered me a lot is the fact that we have this celebration of the youth, that is something that is part of our continent. It's because in a way, even though the old continent was already mixed and complex and all that, we call it old, really old. It's the roots of how we think. There are a lot of things that we took from there. And now with this idea of that the only thing that makes sense is the novelty, and what is happening to us is that it's affecting us to a point that we listen to students and everything is, they cannot think after Facebook or Instagram.
Right.
So what happened is that the lack of history made them, that they always discovering America, but with a map more full of flaws than the Christopher Columbus one. So it is this need that I have, and then to understand that the only way we understand our present is by understanding the past.
Right.
Our present is informed by the past. So I am, of course, very much inspired with the idea of things on the wall, things that are hidden. And I decided I was tempted to paint those paintings on the walls. But then there is the problem that, when we have to
Leave.
then my poor paintings are gonna be by themselves. Even though I love the idea of like decaying with the house and taking the character of getting older, I love that. But it had to be practical. But at the same time, the whole idea that I had, and that it was like to kind of like made a living room, a living room that represented the history of this island and of New York. So it was, that's what I used, the linen, just completely kind of like attached to the walls, and I intervene the layers of the falling apart walls.
But then it also brings up, because like we're going to have another talk next week with a floral designer who has expressed to me that the Dutch still impacts floral design globally.
And this is what I use, the tulips.
Yes.
And then I use the one that is like a little bell that is like native New York. Like how we take it for granted, because it's so mixed with everything, because we take it for granted.
Yes.
It's from here. And I thought that was important. And also the name of Manhattan, that is actually Mannahatta, that is the native name of the island. A little bit twisted, but still it keeps the spirit of the history. And then I thought that was important, and the use of these new aesthetics that we developed by having these people, like we drink tea.
Yes, because it was the Dutch West Indies Company, and they wanted to get to Asia to get the teas and the spices.
And see how everything is like all those little troubles, like going back and forth. And I think it's like when we travel, we don't see, but if you really, we can have like some kind of something that we can see. If we have tattoo or those experiencing us, all those things are in us. And that's what I think is so important to, like you said, also the experience, the material, to do the action of it, and then it's the result, is the aesthetics.
It's like Bloomingdale Road. Bloomingdale Road is Broadway, but Bloomingdale Road got its name from the Dutch because the Dutch saw so much flowers along this pathway. They thought it was blooming, and that's how the name Bloomingdale Road. And then it's these little pieces of history that may not seem important, but they are important.
Like that is where it used to be water. And Canal Street, every time it rains, that's why we got so much water. It is like there used to be a canal.
And there is something very interesting.
So beautiful.
The reason is that the only way to get here is with the little ferry.
Yes.
And then when you're taking the ferry, you see ferries and boats. If you see the picture from the beginning of the century,
it was the same thing. It's the same thing.
I love that.
We are living, moving.
Yes.
Constantly. And I love that.
Yes. In fact, that's one of the nuances about New York in the last, I would say, 25 years, because when Mayor Bloomberg became, our city's leader, one of the things he said was, this is supposed to be a port city. Why aren't people, connected on the water? Yes. So he started the initiative of reestablishing docks back in New York City, because New Yorkers used to just jump in the water. We used to jump in the water, swim, fish. We used to have oysters all the time. We did this naturally, and then we had someone by the name of Robert Moses who felt that we needed, his vision was an inner city with, climbing buildings. But the point was, he didn't understand the importance of connecting to nature and people, that too, you didn't have to choose. It could be and versus or. And I think that's what happens in life lately. It's like either or versus and. There's room for everything. So now tell me, what would you like to share, particularly since we have talked about young people, when they look at your work, what would you like them to feel or like them to understand?
Well, when I make the piece, I have one idea, but I know that when someone sees it, it's a completely different story. What I like is to actually make the piece for themselves. I cannot give them a manual how to do it. I think people should just kind of go and make the map.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I can do is offer
Mm-hmm.
a template or a map or a narrative that people can actually get touched or not. I don't really have that power to actually, say, I'm going to touch you. But I actually can at least offer a way, at least the way that I have, to be touched by other things. So, I just want people to almost, when you write something and people read it and they realize, oh my God, something, I have been thinking about that. I may actually give them the words that they haven't been looking. Maybe I actually give them a reason or an excuse to go back. But I just want people to get engaged in the fact that it is so important for me, happiness is to actually understand myself.
Okay, it is.
So if I can actually offer someone the opportunity to kind of a way for them to find something that they feel happy about, I will have done something.
Okay.
But I don't have control of that, but I just hope that that's exactly what happens.
Okay, that's a really nice wish, because it is true. You can't be happy in this world or find purpose in this world unless you get to know who you are first. So that's really great. What about you, Scherezade?
So I agree with my sister, but I also, one of the things I always say is that when I am teaching, by the way, I always say I can inspire, curiosity. I cannot teach it, but I can inspire you. And I want my paintings to inspire you. I engage you with things that are beautiful. But I really want is to start really paying attention and to be able to decode the complexities of an image and how much an image can tell you.
Okay. All right. So I think this is great. Do we have anyone that have any questions for either of the artists? Or any comments that you may have about the works that you saw? No? Well, one of the things I wish to say is that I love the details of the flora. One, because that's me. I've been like that from a kid. But now I'm understanding it more and more, where it's coming from. And it is about my roots. My family is from the South, and learning now that possibility that we may have come via Barbados.
We all come from the Caribbean.
And very much on one side, and then I do know for a fact, because I lived with my great-grandmother. She died at 110 years old. She died peacefully in my mother's house. And based on the Native American Museum in Lower Manhattan, and they have the census data, I was able to trace my family back to her parents. And we have the census data that goes back. And it actually says, laborer on a farm. Yes, on the census, data. And so it's about going to your roots. And so in my family, there were a lot of farmers, but we also, my great-grandmother was Cherokee Indian. And so therefore, I have that blend of both Cherokee and also African, which may have come via the Caribbean, which is again dealing with this show, the various ways in which people came to Mannahatta or along the Atlantic coast. And so I find that was something I liked, because I could identify that. When it comes to Iliana's piece, what I like is that the chairs, the installations that are bounded, to me it deals with communication. We need to learn to communicate with each other to survive. And those people had to communicate with other types of people in order to survive. What foods can we grow? What fish can we, acquire? What animals can we herd so that we can all survive? If we're not willing to communicate with each other and just stay in our own little, bubble, we may not survive collectively. So that's what I feel was very important about this, that in these early encounters, people were forced to say, okay, what do we need to do so we can all make it together? So again, I'd just like to thank you for participating. Thank you all for listening. And this will be uploaded later today so folks can hear beyond these walls what we discussed today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.